2 hours before our rehearsal dinner, Victoria stood in our kitchen, holding her phone, tears streaming down her face as she delivered the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about love. "Ryan, I can't do this anymore. Marcus proposed to me last night, and I said yes." The engagement ring I'd saved for 18 months to buy suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds on her finger, as she slid it off and placed it on the granite countertop between us. "I'm so sorry, but I have to follow my heart." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at Victoria in complete disbelief, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. 8 years. 8 years of building a life together, planning our future, working toward this moment that was supposed to happen tomorrow at the Grand Riverside Hotel, the same hotel where we'd had our first official date, where I'd nervously asked her to be my girlfriend, and where tomorrow we were supposed to become husband and wife. "Marcus," I managed to croak out, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're marketing director, Marcus. But the guy who's been working for your family for what, 6 months?" Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but she couldn't meet my gaze. "It's not about how long we've known each other, Ryan. It's about the connection we have. He understands me in ways." That she paused, finally looking up at me with those green eyes that had captivated me since college. "I'm sorry. I know this is terrible timing, but I couldn't go through with the wedding tomorrow knowing my heart belongs to someone else." The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria Sterling, daughter of Portland's most influential real estate dynasty, was calling off our wedding to be with an employee. Meanwhile, my family's construction company, Mitchell Construction, was hanging by a thread after a massive lawsuit from a project that had gone sideways. The Sterling family connection wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival. I thought back to how we'd met at Portland State University. I was a junior studying construction management. She was a sophomore majoring in business administration. We'd been paired together for a cross-departmental project, analyzing the economic impact of sustainable building practices and urban development. What started as late nights in the library turned into coffee dates, which turned into weekend adventures, exploring the Columbia River Gorge, which eventually turned into moving in together after graduation. Victoria had always been ambitious, driven by the pressure of living up to the Sterling name. Her father, Charles Sterling, owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Portland, and her mother, Patricia, sat on the boards of 3 different charitable organizations. Victoria was groomed from birth to take over the family business, and I'd always admired her determination to prove herself worthy of that legacy. But somewhere along the way, that ambition had started to feel more like obligation. She'd grown distant over the past year, working later hours, taking business trips that seemed to multiply, and spending more time with her marketing team than with me. I'd chalked it up to pre-wedding stress and the pressure of expanding Sterling real estate into the Seattle market. "When did this happen?" I asked, sinking into one of our kitchen chairs. "When did you realize you had feelings for him?" Victoria sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap. "It wasn't sudden, Ryan. Marcus joined the company in February, and we started working closely on the Aurora District project. He had these incredible ideas about mixed-use developments and sustainable urban planning. We'd stay late at the office, talking about architecture and city planning and the future of Portland's growth." Her voice grew softer, almost dreamy. "He sees the city the way I do. He understands my vision." I felt a bitter laugh escape my throat. "Your vision?" "Victoria, I'm a construction manager. I literally build the buildings you sell. We've talked about sustainable development and urban planning 1,000 times. I've been designing eco-friendly construction methods since before I graduated. It's different with Marcus," she said quietly. "He challenges me intellectually in ways that." She stopped herself, but the damage was done. The implication hung in the air between us like smoke in ways that I didn't. In ways that I never had. 8 years of partnership, of building a life together, of supporting each other through college and career changes and family drama. And apparently I'd never intellectually challenged her the way this newcomer had in 6 months. So what happens? Now, I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Inside, I felt like I was drowning, but outwardly I managed to keep it together. What about tomorrow? What about the 150 guests who are flying in from all over the country? What about the deposits we can't get back? What about... I'll handle all of that, Victoria interrupted. My family will take care of the financial aspects. We'll issue a statement saying the wedding has been postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. People will understand, will they? I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked our small backyard. We'd spent weekends out there planning our garden, talking about where we'd put a swing set someday when we had kids. 'Cause I'm not. Sure, I understand, Victoria. Help me understand how you go from trying on your wedding dress last week to accepting another man's proposal. She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Dressed last Saturday, and I looked in the mirror, and I couldn't picture myself walking down the aisle to you. I could only think about Marcus, about the life we could build together, about the projects we could develop, the impact we could make on this city. And what about the impact we could make? I turned to face her. What about Mitchell Construction partnering with Sterling Real Estate? What about the sustainable housing project we've been planning for the East Side? What about the community center we were going to build for underserved neighborhoods? Ryan, you're a wonderful man, and you're going to make someone very happy. Someday, but I can't marry you just because it makes sense on paper. I have to follow my heart, even if it means hurting people I care about. The thing that stung the most wasn't just the rejection, it was the casual way she dismissed our entire relationship as something that made sense on paper. As if 8 years of love and partnership and shared dreams were nothing more than a business arrangement. As if the nights we'd stayed up talking about our future, the vacations we'd taken to scout locations for our honeymoon, the countless small moments that make up a life together were all just items on a checklist. My phone buzzed with a text. From my dad. Final head count for tomorrow is 147. Caterer needs confirmation by 6 p.m. Everything's still on track. I showed Victoria the message. What do I tell him? Tell him the truth, she said. Tell him I'm sorry, but I can't go through. With it, the truth? I repeated. The truth is that my family is about to lose everything because the Sterling partnership was our only way out of this lawsuit mess. The truth is that my parents spent money they didn't have on this wedding because they thought it would secure our future. The truth is that I'm about to have to tell my father that not only is there no wedding tomorrow, but there's no business partnership either, because his son wasn't intellectually stimulating enough to keep his fiancée interested. Victoria's face crumpled. Ryan, I never meant for it to happen this way. I tried to fight my feelings for Marcus. I really did. Love isn't something you can force or fake. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, someone who can't imagine their life without you. I thought I had that, I said quietly. I thought I had that for 8 years. She stood up, moving toward the hallway that led to our bedroom. I'll pack some things and stay at my parents' house tonight. Marcus is picking me up in an hour. We can figure out the logistics of moving my stuff out over the next few days. The casual mention of Marcus picking her up felt like a slap. How long has this been going on, Victoria? I want the truth this time. She paused in the doorway. We kissed for the first time 3 weeks ago after the Aurora District presentation. But nothing else happened until yesterday, when he proposed. I swear to you, Ryan, I never cheated on you. I would never do that. Just emotionally, I said. Yes, she admitted. Just emotionally. After she left, I sat in our kitchen for a long time, staring at the engagement ring on the counter. It was a 2-carat emerald-cut diamond set in white gold, chosen specifically because Victoria had once mentioned admiring a similar ring in a jewelry store window when we'd walked past it downtown. I'd worked overtime for 6 months to afford it, skipping lunches and canceling plans with friends to save every penny. The silence in the house was deafening. Every corner held memories of our life together. The couch where we'd watched countless movies, the dining table where we'd hosted dinner parties for friends, the kitchen where she'd taught me how to make her grandmother's marinara sauce recipe, the bedroom where we'd planned our future and dreamed about our children. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my dad's number. David Mitchell had built our construction company from nothing. starting with handyman jobs and small renovations before eventually landing contracts for commercial buildings and housing developments. The lawsuit from the Aurora District project, ironically, the same project where Victoria had fallen for Marcus, had hit us hard. A structural issue with the foundation of one of the buildings had resulted in delays and cost overruns that we couldn't absorb. Sterling Partnership was supposed to be our lifeline. "Dad, we need to talk," I said when he answered. "What's wrong? You sound terrible." Victoria called off the wedding. "It's over." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, my dad spoke. "What happened?" I told him everything, about Marcus, about the proposal, about Victoria's decision to follow her heart. I told him about the ring sitting on our kitchen counter and the wedding dress hanging in our closet that would never be worn. Told him about 8 years that had apparently meant less than 6 months of intellectual stimulation. "Son, I'm sorry," he said when I finished. "I know how much she meant to you. What are we going to do about the company?" I asked. "Without the Sterling Partnership, we'll figure something out," he said. But I could hear the defeat in his voice. "We always do, but I knew we wouldn't." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The lawsuit had drained our resources, and without the Sterling contract to stabilize our cash flow, Mitchell Construction would be bankrupt within 6 months. 3 generations of building and hard work would disappear because I hadn't been enough to keep Victoria interested. That's when I remembered something Victoria had mentioned in passing a few weeks ago. Her younger sister Natalie had just finished her MBA at Oregon State and was looking to invest in local businesses. She'd apparently inherited a substantial trust fund from their grandmother and was interested in sustainable development projects. Victoria had laughed about it at the time, saying Natalie was too idealistic and didn't understand the practical realities of business. But as I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the remnants of a failed relationship and facing the collapse of my family's livelihood, idealism started to sound pretty appealing. I pulled out my laptop and searched for Natalie Sterling on social media. I found her LinkedIn profile first, which showed an impressive educational background and several internships with environmental nonprofits. Her Instagram was filled with photos from hiking trips, urban farming projects, and sustainable living workshops. She looked like Victoria, but softer somehow, more approachable. Where Victoria always seemed to be posing for the camera, Natalie's photos captured genuine moments of joy and discovery. I remembered meeting Natalie a few times over the years at Sterling family gatherings. She was 2 years younger than Victoria, quieter, more thoughtful. While Victoria dominated conversations with her business insights and ambitious plans, Natalie would ask thoughtful questions and listen intently to the answers. I'd always liked her, but we'd never spent much time talking one-on-one.
The more
I thought about it, the more the idea began to take shape. Natalie was smart. She had money to invest. She was passionate about the same kind of sustainable development projects that had originally drawn Victoria and me together. More importantly, she was a Sterling, which meant a partnership with her could still save my family's company. But there was something else. Something I was almost afraid to admit to myself. Over the years, in my brief conversations with Natalie, I had always sensed a connection, something real and sincere, that I brushed aside because I was committed to Victoria. It wasn't about business or family ties. It was something deeper. After the breakup, I found Natalie's number in Victoria's contacts. They were close despite their differences, and I stared at it for a long time before finally dialing. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello, Natalie? It's Ryan Mitchell." Victoria's eye faltered, unsure how to describe myself now. Her ex-fiancé, I guess? "Ryan? What happened?" "Victoria called earlier, crying but wouldn't say why. Just said she needed to stay at our parents' tonight and would explain later. She ended things. She's in love with someone else." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Her concern hit me hard. "Not really. But I'm not calling for sympathy. I wanted to talk to you about something, a proposition. I know it sounds crazy and the timing is terrible, but hear me out. You've been exploring sustainable development investments, right?" My family's construction company specializes in eco-friendly building. What if we work together? There was a pause. Ryan, you just got out of a relationship. This might not be the best moment for big business decisions. Actually, I think it is. For the first time in months, I know what I want, not what I'm supposed to want. And I want to build something that matters, with someone who shares that vision. I'm listening, she said softly. Meet me tomorrow. Not as Victoria's sister. Not to talk business, just as you and me. Because I think maybe I was supposed to be planning a future with the wrong sister. The silence that followed wasn't painful, felt like potential. Ryan, Natalie finally said, are you asking me out? Because if you are, I have to admit something. What? I've liked you since the first family barbecue, where Victoria brought you home from college. For 8 years I've watched you with her, and wondered what it would have been like if you had seen me instead. Everything I thought I knew flipped upside down. Natalie, I said, would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Yes, I'd love to. Good, I have a feeling this is the beginning of something really special. As I ended the call, I smiled for the first time in hours. Victoria was right, love can't be forced. But maybe, just maybe, it finds you when and where you least expect it. Tomorrow was supposed to be my wedding day. Now, it was going to be the start of a whole new life. Natalie smiled. Good, because I think we're just getting started. In the weeks that followed the networking event, everything changed. The Sustainable Future Summit brought in more leads than we'd had in half a year. 3 architecture firms reached out. 2 environmental consultants pitched collaborations, and a city official invited us to bid on a green, affordable housing project. But the most important development was my growing partnership with Natalie. Our first formal meeting was that Tuesday in the Sterling Real Estate boardroom. I arrived early, nervous to present to her father, Charles Sterling. But Natalie immediately made me feel at ease with her genuine excitement. Before my dad joins us, she said, spreading out blueprints, I want to show you something I've been working on. The plans detailed a mixed-use development with housing, shops, community gardens, and renewable energy infrastructure designed with sustainability at every level. This is amazing, I said. How long have you been developing this? 2 years. I've been searching for a builder who really understands that. Sustainable construction is about more than just materials. It's about creating livable, thriving communities. This level of detail, I said, pointing to her energy efficiency models, shows serious planning. This isn't idealistic, it's practical, smart urban design. She blushed. Victoria always said I was too theoretical to make things happen. She was wrong about a lot, I replied. When Charles entered, the atmosphere changed. He reviewed the proposal with a sharp eye, measuring risk and reward. But as he went through the financials and environmental impact reports, his skepticism faded. Natalie, this is outstanding, he finally said. Why haven't I seen this before? Because I knew you'd want to partner with big-name developers focused only on profit, she said calmly. But recent events made me realize the best partnerships sometimes come from the least expected places. Charles turned to me, now clearly impressed. Ryan, what's your professional opinion on whether this project can work? With the right team and adequate funding, this could be the flagship sustainable development that Portland has been waiting for, I said honestly. The construction challenges are significant, but not insurmountable. More importantly, projects like this represent the future of urban development. Companies that don't adapt to environmental priorities will be left behind. And you believe Mitchell Construction has the expertise to execute a project of this scope? I thought about my family's company, about the 3 generations of craftsmanship, and integrity that had built our reputation. Mr. Sterling, we've been perfecting sustainable building techniques for years. What we've been missing is a client who shares our vision for what construction can accomplish beyond just putting up buildings. Charles nodded slowly, like to propose a trial partnership. Sterling Real Estate will provide the land acquisition, an initial funding for a smaller version of Natalie's concept, say 30 residential units instead of the full 150. If that project succeeds, we'll consider the larger development. That sounds perfect, I said, trying to contain my excitement. There's one condition, Charles added. Marcus Fletcher has been developing his own proposal for sustainable mix development. I think it would be valuable to have both teams present their concepts to our board of directors. A little friendly competition often brings out the best in everyone involved. My stomach dropped. The thought of competing directly with Marcus Victoria's new boyfriend and the man who'd essentially stolen my life felt like cruel irony. But Natalie spoke before I could respond. "I think that's an excellent idea," she said confidently. "Competition will demonstrate which approach truly serves the community's best interests." As we shook hands and scheduled the presentation for the following month, I realized that Natalie had just committed us to a high-stakes showdown with the man who'd destroyed my engagement. Either we would prove ourselves superior to Marcus's vision, or we would fail publicly and spectacularly. Over the next few weeks, Natalie and I worked together almost daily, refining our proposal and developing detailed implementation strategies. Our collaboration revealed depths to her knowledge that constantly surprised me. She understood construction materials, energy systems, financing structures, and municipal regulations with expertise that rivaled professionals who'd been in the industry for decades. More than that, our personal connection continued to deepen. What had started as mutual attraction and business compatibility evolved into something more substantial. Natalie had a way of challenging my ideas that made them better rather than diminishing them. She asked questions that forced me to think more creatively and offered insights that expanded my understanding of what sustainable development could achieve. One evening, as we worked late in her apartment reviewing zoning requirements, I found myself studying her profile as she concentrated on a particularly complex regulation document. The lamplight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, and I was struck by how naturally beautiful she looked without the formal business attire she wore to meetings. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, catching me staring. "I'm thinking that 3 weeks ago I thought my life was falling apart," I said honestly. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else or working with anyone else." She set down her papers and turned to face me fully. "Ryan, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear me completely before you respond." My heart rate increased. "Okay, I've been attracted to you since the first time Victoria brought you to a family dinner 4 years ago. But I would never have acted on those feelings while you were with my sister, no matter how unhappy you seemed or how poorly she treated you." "Natalie, let me finish," she said gently. "When Victoria called off your wedding, part of me was heartbroken for you because I could see how much pain you were in. But another part of me wondered if maybe finally we might have a chance to explore what I'd been feeling all this time. And now I'm terrified that you're going to wake up one day and realize that I'm just the consolation prize. A sister who was there when the one you really wanted wasn't available anymore." I moved closer to her on the couch, taking her hands in mine. "Natalie, look at me." When she met my eyes, I continued. "Victoria and I were together for 8 years, but we were never partners the way you and I are after 3 weeks. She never challenged me to be better. She never shared my actual interests or values. She never made me feel like I was talking to someone who truly understood what I was trying to accomplish. But you loved her. I loved the idea of her. I loved the stability and the social connections and the fantasy of what our life could look like. But I never felt with Victoria what I feel when I'm sitting here with you, working on something we both care about, is knowing that you see me as an equal rather than a convenience." Natalie searched my face. "What do you feel when you're sitting here with me?" "I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly the person I'm supposed to be with, doing exactly the work that matters to me most." She leaned forward and kissed me softly, and in that moment, I understood the difference between settling for someone and choosing someone. With Victoria, I'd been trying to convince myself that good enough was the same as right. Everything felt effortless and inevitable. When we broke apart, she smiled. "Good, because I have some ideas about energy efficient heating systems that are going to completely change your perspective on residential construction." I laughed. "Of course you do." The night before our presentation to the Sterling Real Estate Board, I couldn't sleep. Everything we'd worked for over the past month would be decided in a single meeting. If we succeeded, Michelle Construction would secure the largest contract in our company's history and establish ourselves as leaders in sustainable development. If we failed, we'd lose credibility with Portland's most influential real estate. Family and probably watch Marcus claim the opportunities that should have been ours. But more than business concerns, I was thinking about the symbolic importance of this presentation. It represented my complete transformation from Victoria's abandoned fiancé to Natalie's equal partner. Success would prove that I'd made the right choice in walking away from one relationship and embracing another. Failure would suggest that maybe Victoria had been right about my limitations. At 6 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Can't sleep either. Want to meet for coffee and run through our presentation one more time?" An hour later, we sat in a quiet cafe near downtown, reviewing our materials and discussing last-minute adjustments. Natalie looked as nervous as I felt, which was somehow reassuring. "Whatever happens today," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee, "I want you to know that these past few weeks have been some of the best of my life." "Mine too," I said. "And regardless of what the board decides, we're going to continue working together. This partnership is too good to depend on any single project. Promise? Promise?" At exactly 10 o'clock, we walked into the Sterling Real Estate Conference Room to find 12 board members seated around an impose. The next morning arrived. With the cruel indifference that only comes after life-changing disasters, I woke up on the couch where I'd fallen asleep, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My neck stiff from the awkward angle against the armrest. For a split second, the events of the previous day felt like a nightmare until I saw Victoria's engagement. Ring still sitting on the kitchen counter, catching the morning sunlight streaming through our window. My phone had been buzzing incessantly since dawn. Text messages from confused wedding guests, missed calls from vendors asking about final preparations, voicemails from relatives who'd flown in from out of state. Each notification felt like a small knife twisting in my chest, reminding me that today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The doorbell rang at 8:30. I opened it to find my parents standing on the porch with coffee and pastries from our neighborhood bakery. My mother, Linda, took one look at my disheveled appearance and immediately pulled me into a fierce hug. "We came as soon as we could," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father wanted to drive over last night, but I thought you might need some time alone first." Dad set the coffee on the kitchen table and surveyed the ring still sitting on the counter. "Have you heard from her today?" I shook my head. She was staying at her parents' house. I assume she's dealing with the fallout from their end. "What about the venue?" Mom asked gently. "The caterer called us this morning, asking about the final head count." "I'll handle it," I said, though I had no idea how. The thought of calling the Grand Riverside Hotel to cancel what was supposed to be the wedding of the century felt impossible. I need to shower first and clear my head. Under the hot water, I let myself fully process what had happened. 8 years of my life had ended in a single conversation. The woman I'd planned to spend forever with had fallen in love with someone else and hadn't even had the courtesy to tell me before accepting his proposal. The business partnership that was supposed to save my family's company had evaporated along with my relationship. But underneath the pain and humiliation, something else was stirring. Relief. As devastating as Victoria's betrayal was, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd actually done me a favor. How many nights over the past year had I lain awake wondering why our conversations felt so strained? How many times had I suggested romantic dates only to have her counter with business dinners or networking events? How many moments of genuine intimacy had been interrupted by her phone buzzing with work emergencies that never seemed to end? I'd convinced myself that this was what mature relationships looked like, that the butterflies and excitement of our college years naturally evolved into comfortable companionship and shared goals. But thinking about my conversation with Natalie last night, I realized I'd been settling for less than I deserved. When I came downstairs, my parents were huddled around the kitchen table with serious expressions. Dad looked up as I entered. "Son, we need to talk about the company." I poured myself coffee and sat down. "How bad is it?" "The Aurora District lawsuit is worse than we initially thought," Dad said. "The foundation issues weren't just in one building there, throughout the entire complex. We're looking at potential damages that could reach 7 figures. Without the Sterling partnership, we don't have the resources to fight this," Mom added quietly. "We might have to consider bankruptcy." The weight of our situation settled over me like a heavy blanket. 3 generations of Mitchell men had built this company from nothing. My grandfather started with a hammer and a pickup truck, taking on small renovation jobs to support his growing family. My father expanded into commercial construction, earning a reputation for quality work and ethical business practices. I'd joined the company after college with dreams of revolutionizing sustainable building practices in the Pacific Northwest. Now, it was all about to disappear because of structural problems in a project I'd personally overseen. The irony that Victoria's new boyfriend had been the marketing director for that same project wasn't lost on me. "There might be another option," I said slowly. "I spoke with Natalie Sterling last night." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Victoria's sister?" "She'll say she's interested in sustainable development investments. She has access to capital through her trust fund, and she's passionate about environmental building practices." "If we could present her with a solid business plan, Ryan," Mom interrupted gently. "I know you're grasping for solutions, but getting involved with another Sterling daughter so soon after Victoria, this isn't about revenge or rebound relationships," I said firmly. "This is about recognizing that maybe I was trying to build a partnership with the wrong person all along." Before my parents could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Charles Sterling, Victoria's father. I hesitated before answering, unsure what to expect from the man who'd been treating me like a future son-in-law for the past 2 years. "Ryan, I heard about what happened," Charles said without preamble. "I want you to know that Victoria's decision doesn't reflect the family's feelings about you or your character." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I appreciate that. I also want you to know that the business discussions we've had over the past months weren't contingent on your relationship with Victoria. Sterling Real Estate is still interested in exploring a partnership with Mitchell Construction." I felt a flicker of hope. Even after what happened, business is business, Ryan. Your company does excellent work, and we value that relationship regardless of personal circumstances. However, I do need to be transparent with you about something. My heart sank. There was always a however. Marcus Fletcher, the man Victoria is involved with, has presented some compelling proposals for the Aurora District redevelopment. His vision for mixed-use, sustainable communities aligns with our company's new direction. We're seriously considering bringing him on as a full partner. The name hit me like a physical blow. Marcus wasn't just some marketing director who'd swept Victoria off her feet. He was positioning himself to take over the business opportunities that should have been mine. He'd stolen my fiancée and was now trying to steal my career. "I understand," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I appreciate your honesty. Take some time to process everything that's happened," Charles said, "but don't take too long. The construction industry moves fast, and opportunities don't wait for personal drama to resolve itself." After hanging up, I stared at my parents with grim determination. We need to move quickly. If Marcus thinks he can waltz in and take over everything I've worked for, he's got another thing coming. "What are you thinking?" Dad asked. "I'm thinking it's time to have that dinner with Natalie Sterling." That afternoon, I drove to the Grand Riverside Hotel to handle the wedding cancellation in person. The event coordinator, a kind woman named Helen, who'd spent months helping us plan every detail, looked genuinely heartbroken when I explained the situation. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," she said, pulling out her file. "I've been doing this for 15 years and I've seen my share of canceled weddings, but never this close to the actual date." "What are our options?" I asked. "Financially, you'll lose most of your deposits. The catering can be canceled with a 24-hour penalty, but the flowers, music, and venue rental are non-refundable. Unless you wanted to convert it to a different type of event?" "What do you mean?" "Well, everything is already set up for tomorrow night. The ballroom is decorated, the caterer is prepared, the band is booked. Some couples choose to host a celebration anyway, birthday party, family reunion, corporate event. It helps offset some of the financial loss." An idea began forming in my mind. What if I wanted to host a business networking event? Something focused on sustainable development and green building practices. Helen's face brightened. That could work perfectly. We could adjust the catering to a cocktail reception format, modify the decorations to be more business appropriate, and change the music to background ambience instead of dancing. And I could invite local developers, architects, environmental consultants. Absolutely. This could actually be a wonderful opportunity to showcase your company's expertise in a more casual setting. As I drove home, the plan crystallized in my mind. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I would transform what should have been my wedding reception into a networking event that could potentially save my company. And I would make sure that Natalie Sterling was the guest of honor. I spent the rest of the afternoon making phone calls, sending emails, and crafting invitations for what I was calling the Sustainable Future Summit. The irony of using my canceled wedding venue to potentially launch a new business partnership wasn't lost on me, but it felt like poetic justice rather than desperation. By evening, I had confirmed attendance from 35 industry professionals, including several potential clients who'd been difficult to reach through traditional channels. The guest list included architects specializing in green building design, environmental consultants, city planning officials, and investors interested in sustainable development projects. At 7 o'clock, I picked up my phone to call Natalie. She answered immediately as if she'd been waiting. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice warm with genuine concern. "Better than I expected, actually. Listen, I know we talked about dinner, but I have a better idea. What if I told you I'm hosting a sustainable development networking event tomorrow night? I'd love for you to be there as my guest." "At the Grand Riverside Hotel," she asked. "Isn't that where your wedding was supposed to be?" "Which was. But now it's going to be where I launch the next phase of my career. With or without your sister's approval." Natalie was quiet for a moment. "Ryan, are you sure you're ready for something like this? It's been less than 24 hours since I realized I was about to marry the wrong person," I finished. "Natalie, I meant what I said last night. I think we have more in common than anyone realizes, and I think this event could be the perfect opportunity to explore that connection in a professional setting. What about Victoria? Won't she be upset if she finds out I'm there? Victoria chose her path yesterday. Now I'm choosing mine." I heard her take a deep breath. "Okay, yes, I'll be there. But Ryan, I want you to know that I'm not interested in being anyone's rebound or revenge plot. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, it has to be genuine." "It is genuine," I said without hesitation. "It's more genuine than anything I felt in a long time." The next morning, I woke up feeling more energized than I had in months. Instead of spending the day getting ready for my wedding, I was preparing for what felt like the most important business event of my career. I put on my best suit, ironically, the one I'd planned to wear to the rehearsal dinner, and drove to the hotel to oversee the final preparations. The transformation was remarkable. What had been set up as a romantic wedding venue now looked like an elegant business reception. The soft pink and white flowers had been replaced with sophisticated arrangements of greenery and white blooms. The round tables had been reconfigured for networking, with informational displays about sustainable building practices strategically placed throughout the room. As guests began arriving, I felt a surge of pride and nervous excitement. This was my chance to prove that Mitchell Construction could stand on its own merit, without needing the Sterling family name to validate our work. And then Natalie walked in, and everything else faded into the background. She wore a navy blue dress that complemented her auburn hair perfectly, and she moved through the room with quiet confidence, stopping to introduce herself to other guests, and asking thoughtful questions about their work. Watching her interact with industry professionals, I realized she wasn't just Charles Sterling's younger daughter, she was a formidable businesswoman in her own right. "This is incredible, Ryan," she said when she finally made her way over to me. "I can't believe you put this together in 24 hours. Sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to force them and start following your instincts." I replied. She smiled. "Is that what you're doing with me?" "Following your instincts," among other things, I said, offering her my arm. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people. I have a feeling they're going to be very interested in what you have to say about sustainable development financing." As we moved through the crowd together, I couldn't help but think that this felt more natural and right than any moment I'd shared with Victoria in recent memory. And judging by the way Natalie's hand felt perfectly comfortable resting on my arm, I wasn't the only one feeling that connection. The networking event was proceeding better than I could have imagined when Victoria and Marcus walked through the hotel entrance at exactly 9:15. I saw them before they saw me, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. Victoria wore the emerald green cocktail dress she'd originally planned to wear to our rehearsal dinner, while Marcus had on an expensive-looking charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They stood in the doorway, scanning the room, clearly confused by what they were seeing. This was supposed to be our wedding reception, but instead they found a sophisticated business gathering with Portland's most influential developers and architects, mingling over craft cocktails and discussing sustainable urban planning initiatives. Natalie noticed them at the same time I did. Her grip on my arm tightened slightly, but she didn't pull away. "Do you want me to disappear for a few minutes?" she asked quietly. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "You're my guest, and this is my event. They're the ones who don't belong here." Victoria spotted us across the room, and I watched her face cycle through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. She said something to Marcus, who followed her gaze and immediately tensed when he saw me with Natalie. They made their way through the crowd toward us, Victoria's high heels clicking purposefully against the marble floor. Several people turned to watch their approach, sensing the drama that was about to unfold. "Ryan," Victoria said when they reached us, her voice carefully controlled. "What is this?" "This is the Sustainable Future Summit," I replied calmly. "A networking event for professionals interested in environmentally conscious development projects. I'm surprised to see you here, considering you made it very clear that your interests lie elsewhere." Marcus stepped slightly forward, his hand moving possessively to Victoria's lower back. "We heard there was some kind of event happening at the hotel and came to investigate. We certainly didn't expect to find you hosting a business function on what was supposed to be your wedding day." Life moves on, Marcus. Some of us adapt to changing circumstances instead of dwelling on the past. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she took in the sight of her sister standing beside me. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" I was invited. Natalie replied with remarkable composure. "Ryan thought I might be interested in learning more about sustainable construction practices, and he was right. It's fascinating work. Fascinating enough to attend an event with your sister's ex-fiancé less than 24 hours after our breakup." Victoria's voice had taken on a sharp edge that I recognized from our worst arguments. "Fascinating enough to recognize it." "Good business opportunity when I see one," Natalie countered. "Unlike some people, I don't let personal relationships cloud my professional judgment." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's face darkened, and Victoria looked like she'd been slapped. "This is unbelievable," Victoria said, her voice rising enough that nearby conversations began to pause. "You're my sister, Natalie. How could you do this to me?" "Do what exactly?" Natalie asked. "Attend a business networking event. Have a conversation with someone who happens to be your ex-boyfriend. Or are you upset because you're finally seeing what you gave up?" Watch this exchange with a mixture of fascination and admiration. Natalie was handling her sister's emotional manipulation with grace and intelligence, refusing to be guilted into apologizing for something she hadn't done wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said loudly enough for the immediate area to hear, "I'd like you to meet Natalie Sterling, one of Oregon's most promising young investors in sustainable development projects. She's currently evaluating opportunities to fund innovative green building initiatives throughout the Pacific Northwest." Several architects and developers immediately moved closer, sensing a potential funding source. Natalie gracefully shifted into professional mode, discussing her investment criteria and environmental priorities, while Victoria and Marcus found themselves suddenly excluded from the conversation. "This is ridiculous," Victoria whispered harshly. To me, while Natalie was engaged with a group of potential partners, "You're using my sister to get back at me." "I'm not using anyone, Victoria. Unlike some people in this room, I'm capable of recognizing genuine connections that aren't based on manipulation or convenience." "Genuine connections?" she scoffed. "You've known my sister for what? A few years at family gatherings? Know anything about her?" "I know she's passionate about environmental sustainability. I know she asks thoughtful questions and listens to the answers. I know she treats people with respect, regardless of what they can do for her. I know she doesn't make promises she has no intention of keeping." Victoria's face flushed red. "Are you implying that I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." We spent 8 years making promises about our future together, and when someone more interesting came along, you abandoned all of it without a second thought. Natalie, on the other hand, has been nothing but honest and straightforward with me from the moment we started talking. Marcus finally spoke up, his voice dripping with condescension. Ryan, I think you're confused about what's happening here. Victoria chose me because we have a real connection, not because she wanted to hurt you. Sometimes people grow apart, and the mature thing to do is accept that and move on. You're absolutely right, Marcus. The mature thing is to move on. Is exactly what I'm doing. I gestured toward Natalie, who was now discussing potential partnership opportunities with 3 different firms. The difference is that I'm moving on to something better, not just different. Better, Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Ryan, be realistic. Natalie is sweet, but she's not. She's not what? Not as calculating as you? Not as quick to use people for personal gain? Not as ready to abandon commitments when something new comes along? The words came out sharper than I meant, but I didn't take them back. For too long, I'd tiptoed around Victoria, hesitant to call her out for her selfishness. But tonight, surrounded by professionals who treated me as an equal, not just someone convenient, I finally felt like myself again. You're making a serious mistake, Victoria said, her voice low. My father was still willing to keep the business relationship going despite what happened between us. But if you go forward with this thing with Natalie, you'll ruin any hope of working with Sterling Real Estate. Is that a threat? It's reality. You really think Natalie can offer what our family does? She's naive and inexperienced. She doesn't understand how real business works. Maybe that's exactly the kind of person this industry needs, someone who puts community before profit. Marcus leaned in, lowering his voice. Ryan, I get it, you're hurt, and you're searching for something to hold on to. But using Victoria's sister as a rebound? That's not like you? It's not fair to her either. I looked him squarely in the eye. The only one using anyone here is you. You used your job at Sterling Real Estate to cozy up to Victoria, and now you're leveraging her connections to climb the ladder. What Natalie and I are building is based on mutual respect and shared vision, not opportunism. You and Natalie. Victoria laughed bitterly. You had one conversation with her yesterday. You don't know the first thing about what she wants or what she's capable of. I know she can recognize real potential when she sees. It came a voice behind us. Natalie had apparently overheard the conversation. I know she doesn't like being talked about like she's not in the room. Victoria turned to her. Can't seriously be considering something. With Ryan, this is classic rebound behavior. You're going to get hurt. What I'm doing, Natalie responded evenly, is having thoughtful conversations with people about projects that matter. What you're doing is trying to control a situation you cause. Dan, that no longer involves you. Is my ex-fiancé. Exactly ex. Or gave up any right to weigh in on his life when you chose to leave. You don't get to decide who he spends time with now. Her words hit home. I felt immense gratitude for her standing up for what we were building. Victoria had made her decision. She didn't get to make mine. This is ridiculous, Marcus. Snapped Victoria. Let's go. Let them play house if they want it. Won't change anything that matters. Actually, said a new voice. It might change quite a lot. We turned to see Charles Sterling approaching. He must have caught part of the exchange. Natalie, I've been listening to your discussions tonight, he said. I'm impressed by your insight into sustainable development finance. Victoria's face paled. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm considering what's best for this company, Charles interrupted. And from what I've seen tonight, the future of Sterling Real Estate may involve some unexpected partnerships. He looked at me. Ryan, I'd like to schedule a meeting with you and Natalie next week. Your construction expertise, combined with her financial insight and environmental focus, could be exactly what we need. Victoria looked stunned. Marcus seemed to be doing mental damage control. We'd be glad to have that conversation, I said, keeping my tone measured. Excellent, Natalie. My assistant will be in touch. With a polite nod to Victoria and Marcus, he walked away. Victoria stared after him, then turned back to me with a look I didn't recognize. Shock, regret, and maybe a glimmer of respect. You set this up to get back at me. No, Victoria. Set this up to move forward. That it's working better than I expected. It's not revenge. It's just smart business. Marcus tugged at her arm. Let's go. This isn't helping. but she didn't move. She kept looking at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. "Ryan, you made your choice," I said gently. "Now I'm making mine." Finally, she let Marcus lead her away, but not before casting one last look at Natalie and me. As they faded into the crowd, I felt the last traces of emotional attachment to Victoria slip away. That was intense," Natalie said, stepping closer. "I'm sorry you had to see that. This wasn't supposed to include family drama." "Don't apologize. I've watched Victoria manipulate people my whole life. Each time someone stood up to her, she studied my face. How do you feel?" Gave it real thought, relief, clarity, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. Vindicated, I finally said, and more than ready for what comes next. But more than anything, I felt free. "I feel like I just woke up from a very long dream," I said. "Not like what I see when I look around." Natalie smiled. "Good, because I have a feeling we're just getting started." Exactly 10 o'clock. We walked into the Sterling Real Estate Conference Room to find 12 board members seated around an imposing oval table. Victoria sat near the far end, her face carefully neutral, while Marcus stood at the head of the room adjusting his presentation, at materials with the confidence of someone who believed he'd already won. Charles Sterling gestured for us to take seats on the opposite side of the table from Victoria. "Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be hearing 2 proposals for our new Sustainable Development Initiative. Marcus Fletcher will present first, followed by the Mitchell-Sterling Partnership." The way he phrased it, the Mitchell-Sterling Partnership, sent a thrill through me. This wasn't just Ryan Mitchell presenting to potential clients. This was an equal collaboration being recognized at the highest levels of one of Portland's most successful companies. Marcus launched into his presentation with polished enthusiasm, describing a mixed-use development that prioritized luxury amenities and premium pricing while incorporating minimal environmental features. His concept included high-end retail spaces, expensive condominiums, and what he called boutique sustainability, designed to appeal to wealthy buyers who wanted to feel environmentally conscious without sacrificing comfort. "The beauty of this approach," Marcus said, clicking through sleek renderings on his laptop, "is that sustainability becomes a marketing advantage rather than a construction constraint. We can charge premium prices for eco-friendly features, while maintaining the profit margins that make large-scale development viable." Several board members nodded approvingly at his financial projections, showed impressive returns on investment within the first 3 years. Victoria watched him with obvious admiration, and I found myself wondering if this was how she'd looked at me during our early presentations to her family. When Marcus finished, Charles thanked him and invited Natalie and me to present our alternative vision. As we stood and moved to the front of the room, I caught Victoria's eye for a brief moment. She looked curious despite herself, and I realized she'd never actually seen me present in a professional setting without her dominating the conversation. Natalie began our presentation by discussing the philosophical foundation of our approach. True sustainable development isn't about adding green features to traditional luxury projects, she said, her voice clear and confident. It's about reimagining how communities can exist in harmony with their environment while providing affordable, high-quality housing for working families. She clicked to our first slide, which showed demographic data about Portland's housing crisis and the growing gap between median income and average home prices. "We're proposing development that serves the community's actual needs rather than just the desires of the wealthiest 10% of buyers." I took over, walking the board. Through our construction methodologies and innovative building techniques, Mitchell Construction has developed proprietary systems for energy-efficient housing that reduce utility costs by 60% compared to traditional builds. These aren't expensive add-ons. They're fundamental design principles that make housing more affordable for residents while generating consistent returns for investors. Our presentation revealed the depth of research and planning we'd accomplished over the past month. We'd consulted with environmental scientists, affordable housing advocates, municipal planners, and renewable energy specialists. Every aspect of our proposal addressed real challenges facing Portland's growth and development. "The financial model works because we're building for volume rather than luxury," Natalie explained, showing our cost analysis. lower per unit profit. Margins are offset by faster sales cycles and reduced construction overhead. More importantly, we're creating a replicable model that can scale across multiple projects. As we progress through our presentation, I watched the board members' expressions shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. They asked detailed questions about construction timelines, material sourcing, financing structures, and long-term maintenance costs. Each question demonstrated that they were taking our proposals seriously as a viable business opportunity rather than just an idealistic experiment. The most telling moment came when board member Patricia Wells asked about community, integration, and social impact. Marcus's proposal had barely addressed these concerns beyond mentioning that luxury developments would improve property values in surrounding neighborhoods. Our response detailed partnerships with local schools, community gardens, public transportation, connections, and small business incubation programs. This isn't just housing development, I said in conclusion. This is community building that happens to include residential construction. When we finished, the room fell silent for several seconds. Charles Sterling studied our materials with the same intense focus I'd seen him apply to major acquisition decisions. Both presentations offer interesting perspectives, he said finally. I'd like the board to take a 15-minute recess to discuss what we've heard. As board members filed out of the room, Victoria approached us with an expression I couldn't quite read.
That
was impressive, she said quietly. I had no idea you'd developed such detailed community impact analysis. There's a lot you don't know about what I'm capable of, I replied, not unkindly but firmly. I'm beginning to understand that, she said, glancing at Natalie. You two make a good team. Before either of us could respond, Marcus joined our conversation. His earlier confidence had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like concern. Nice presentation, he said with forced casualness, though I think you might be overestimating the market demand for affordable housing in premium locations. We're not overestimating anything, Natalie replied coolly. We're responding to documented community needs with practical solutions. Practical solutions don't always translate to profitable investments, Marcus countered. Sterling Real Estate has a responsibility to its shareholders to prioritize returns. Sterling Real Estate also has a responsibility to the community that's made our success possible, Victoria said unexpectedly. Maybe it's time we considered what kind of legacy we want to leave. Marcus looked genuinely surprised by her comment, and I realized that Victoria might be questioning more than just our business proposal. She was questioning the values that had driven her recent decisions. When the board reconvened, Sterling's expression was unreadable. We've reached a decision, he announced. Both proposals have merit, but one aligns more closely with Sterling Real Estate's vision for responsible growth and community development. My ribs as he paused dramatically. The board has voted to move forward with the Mitchell-Sterling Sustainable Community Project. Natalie and Ryan, congratulations on your partnership with Sterling Real Estate. The room erupted in polite applause, but I barely heard it over the rushing sound in my ears. We'd won. Not only had we secured the contract, but we'd done it. By presenting a superior vision that prioritized community benefit alongside business success. Marcus's face had gone completely pale. I don't understand, he said. My financial projections showed significantly higher returns. Higher returns aren't always better returns, Charles replied diplomatically. This board believes in building sustainable value rather than maximizing short-term profits. As board members began filing out, offering congratulations and scheduling follow-up meetings, Victoria lingered near the conference table. When the room had mostly cleared, she approached me once more. Ryan, I owe you an apology, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I underestimated you for years, and I made assumptions about what you were capable of achieving. You present today, seeing the work you and Natalie have accomplished together. I realize how much I failed to appreciate what we could have built together. Victoria, let me finish, she interrupted gently. I'm not asking for another chance, and I'm not trying to interfere with what you and Natalie have. I just needed you to know that I recognize my mistakes, and I'm genuinely happy that you found someone who sees your potential the way I should have. It was the most honest and vulnerable I'd ever seen Victoria, and I felt a complex mixture of validation and sadness. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means more than you probably realize." She nodded, glanced once more at Natalie, who was discussing implementation timelines with her father, and then walked out of the conference room. I watched her go, feeling the final dissolution of whatever emotional hold she'd maintained over my life. Marcus followed her out without speaking to anyone, his defeat evident in his slouched shoulders and rapid exit. I found myself feeling almost sorry for him until I remembered how he'd gloated about taking everything that should have been mine. "So," Natalie said, moving to stand beside me as the room finally emptied except for us and her father, "how does it feel to be a partner in Portland's next major sustainable development project?" "It feels like justice," I said honestly. "But mostly it feels like the beginning of something incredible." Charles Sterling gathered his papers and smiled at both of us. "I'll have our legal team draw up the partnership agreements next week. Ryan, I hope you're prepared for your company to grow significantly over the next few years. This project is just the first of what I suspect will be many collaborations." As we left the Sterling real estate building together, Natalie slipped her hand into mine. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking about how 3 months ago I thought I was about to marry the wrong person and commit to a life that would have made me miserable. I'm thinking about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the best things that could have happened, and now I'm thinking about how lucky I am that Victoria called off our engagement for Marcus's proposal, because it led me to call you and make the best proposal of my life." Natalie stopped walking and turned to face me. "Is that what this has been? An extended proposal?" "In a way, yes. I've been proposing a partnership, a future, a completely different kind of life than either of us imagined possible a few months ago." "And what kind of response are you hoping for to this proposal?" I pulled her closer. Right there on the sidewalk in front of Portland's business district, surrounded by the city we were going to help reshape. "I'm hoping you'll say yes to all of it. The business partnership, the personal relationship, the possibility that we might be building something that lasts longer than either of us can imagine right now." She reached up and kissed me, soft and certain and full of promise. She said against my lips, "Yes to all of it." As we walked toward my truck, I thought about the mysterious ways life redirects us toward our true destinations. 6 months ago, I'd been convinced that marrying Victoria was my path to happiness and success. Now I understood that she'd been a detour, not a destination, and that sometimes getting lost is the only way to find where you really belong. The afternoon sun reflected off the windows of downtown buildings, casting everything in golden light. That made the future seem bright and full of infinite possibility. We had work to do, communities to build, a partnership to nurture that encompassed everything I'd ever wanted from love and career and purpose. But first, we had something to celebrate. 6 months after our successful presentation to the Sterling Real Estate Board, Natalie and I stood on the construction site of our first community development project, watching excavators break ground on what would become home to 30 families within the next 18 months. The morning air carried the scent of fresh earth and possibility, and I couldn't help but marvel at how dramatically my life had transformed since that devastating phone call from Victoria. Mitchell Construction had doubled its workforce to handle the increased demand for sustainable building projects. The success of our Sterling partnership had attracted attention from developers throughout the Pacific Northwest, and we now had contracts extending into Seattle, Eugene, and even as far north as Vancouver. My father, who'd spent sleepless nights worrying about bankruptcy just months earlier, now talked about expanding into commercial construction and establishing a consulting division for green building practices. But the professional success, satisfying as it was, paled in comparison to the personal fulfillment I'd found with Natalie. Our relationship had evolved from business partnership to romantic involvement to something deeper and more substantial than I'd ever experienced, which challenged me intellectually, supported my ambitions, and shared my values in ways that made every day feel like a new adventure in building something meaningful together. "The community gardens will go there," Natalie said, pointing to an area near the southern edge of the property where we'd preserved several mature oak trees. "And the playground equipment will be positioned to take advantage of natural shade during the hottest parts of the day." Her attention to detail continued to amaze me. While I focused on construction logistics and building efficiency, she considered how families would actually live in these spaces. She thought about children walking to school, elderly residents needing accessible transportation, working parents requiring convenient parking and safe outdoor areas for their kids to play. "Have you decided about the rooftop solar proposal?" I asked, reviewing the morning's delivery schedules on my tablet. "I think we should go with the integrated panel system instead of traditional mounting," she said. "The initial cost is higher, but the aesthetic integration will be worth it when we're presenting this project as a model for future developments." This was how most of our conversations went now, a seamless blending of business considerations and personal interaction. We developed a working rhythm that felt as natural as breathing, each of us bringing unique strengths to decisions that affected both our professional and personal lives. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown Portland number. I almost declined it, expecting another sales pitch or survey request, but something made me answer. "Ryan, this is Marcus Fletcher. Wow, I was wondering if we could meet for coffee sometime soon." The name hit me like cold water. I hadn't spoken to Victoria's boyfriend since our competing presentations to the Sterling board, and hearing his voice brought back uncomfortable memories of that humiliating period when he'd seemed to be claiming everything that should have been mine. "What can I do for you, Marcus?" I kept my voice neutral, though Natalie noticed my change in expression and moved closer. "I'd rather discuss it in person, if you don't mind. It's about a business opportunity that might interest you. I'm pretty busy these days. If you have a proposal, you can email the details to my office. Ryan, please, just 30 minutes. I think you'll find what I have to say worth your time." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him that afternoon at a downtown coffee shop. After hanging up, I explained the conversation to Natalie, who looked as puzzled as I felt. "What could he possibly want?" she asked. "Last I heard, he was working on independent development projects after things didn't work out with Sterling Real Estate. Maybe he wants to apologize for trying to steal our business. Or maybe he wants to try again," she said with a slight frown. "Be careful, Ryan. Marcus is charming and persuasive, but he's also opportunistic. Don't let him manipulate you into anything you'll regret." That afternoon, I arrived at the coffee shop to find Marcus already seated at a corner table, looking significantly less polished than he had during our board presentation. His expensive suit had been replaced with casual slacks and a rumpled button-down shirt, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you'd give me the chance to explain." "Explain what?" He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment before looking up. "Everything that's happened over the past year. My relationship with Victoria, the way I handled the Sterling real estate situation, the way I treated you during what must have been a very difficult time. This wasn't what I'd expected." "Marcus, if you're looking for absolution, I'm not looking for anything from you," he interrupted. "I'm trying to make amends for some very poor decisions, starting with an apology for the way I pursued Victoria while she was still engaged to you. She made her own choices, but I encouraged those choices. I knew she was having doubts about your relationship, and instead of staying out of it, I saw an opportunity to advance my own interests, both personally and professionally." His honesty was disarming. I'd expected defensive justifications or attempts to minimize his role in the dissolution of my engagement. Instead, he seemed genuinely remorseful. "What happened between you and Victoria?" I asked. Marcus laughed bitterly. "What happened is that I got exactly what I thought I wanted, and it turned out to be nothing like what I'd imagined. Victoria is beautiful, intelligent, and ambitious, but she's also demanding, controlling, and completely incapable of seeing other people as anything more than means to her own ends." "You're describing the woman you left me for." "I'm describing the woman who left me 3 weeks ago for a venture capitalist from San Francisco, who offered her a partnership in a luxury resort development company." The irony was almost too perfect. Victoria had abandoned her 8-year relationship with me for a 6-month affair with Marcus, who she'd then abandoned for someone with even better business prospects. The pattern was so clear that I wondered how I'd missed it during our years together. I'm sorry, I said, and surprisingly I meant it. That must have been difficult. The difficult part wasn't losing Victoria, Marcus said. The difficult part was realizing that I'd destroyed my professional reputation and personal integrity. For someone who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone to her next opportunity, why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an explanation? And because I have a business proposition that might benefit both of us? Here it comes, I thought. A real reason for this meeting. I've been working on an affordable housing project in North Portland, Marcus continued. 48 units designed for working families with sustainable building practices and community-focused amenities, similar to what you and Natalie accomplished with the Sterling project, but targeted toward a slightly different demographic. And you want Mitchell Construction to handle the building? I want more than that. I want to propose a partnership where your company handles construction while I manage financing and development logistics. I've learned a lot about sustainable building practices over the past year, and I think we could create something significant together. I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation and opportunism that Natalie had warned me about. Instead, I saw what appeared to be genuine remorse and a desire to rebuild his professional reputation through legitimate work rather than personal connections. Marcus, I appreciate the apology, and I'm sorry things didn't work out with Victoria, but I'm not sure a partnership between us would be appropriate given our history. I understand your reluctance, he said, but consider this. You've proven that sustainable, affordable housing can be both environmentally responsible and financially viable. If we could replicate that success on a larger scale, we could have a real impact on Portland's housing crisis. Mitchell Construction already has more contracts than we can handle. We don't need additional projects right now. You don't need additional projects, but Portland needs additional affordable housing. And frankly, I need a chance to prove that I can contribute something meaningful to this community, instead of just taking its advantage of opportunities that other people created. There was something compelling about his honesty. The Marcus sitting across from me bore a little resemblance to the confident manipulator who'd stolen my fiancée and competed for my business contracts. This version seemed humbled by experience and genuinely interested in making positive contributions rather than advancing his own agenda. I need to discuss this with Natalie before making any decisions, I said. Of course, I'm not asking for an answer today. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that people can change, that sometimes unexpected partnerships can accomplish things that traditional alliances can't achieve. As I drove back to the construction site, I found myself thinking about redemption and second chances. A year ago, I would have dismissed any proposal from Marcus out of hand, viewing him as irredeemably selfish and untrustworthy, but my own transformation over the past months had taught me that people were capable of fundamental change when circumstances forced them to confront their own limitations and mistakes. Natalie was reviewing architectural plans when I returned, her brow furrowed in concentration as she calculated optimal spacing for electrical systems. She looked up as I approached, and I was struck again by how naturally beautiful she was when she was absorbed in work she cared about. "How did it go with Marcus?" she asked. I explained our conversation, including his apology, his account of Victoria's latest relationship change, and his proposal for a collaborative affordable housing project. Natalie listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions but mostly allowing me to process the meeting out loud. "What's your instinct?" she asked when I finished. "My instinct is that he's sincere about wanting to make amends and contribute something positive. But my rational mind is warning me that working with him could complicate our professional reputation and personal relationship." "Those are both valid concerns," she said thoughtfully. "But there's another consideration. If Marcus has genuinely learned from his mistakes and is committed to ethical business practices, excluding him from sustainable development work might actually harm the community we're trying to serve. You think we should consider his proposal?" "I think we should evaluate it the same way we'd evaluate any other potential partnership based on the project's merits, the financial viability, and our capacity to deliver quality results. Marcus's past behavior with Victoria is irrelevant. 2. Whether his affordable housing concept could benefit working families in North Portland. This was one of the things I most admired about Natalie. her ability to separate personal feelings from professional judgments. Where I was inclined to let emotional history influence business decisions, she focused on objective criteria and community impact. What would you need to see from him to feel comfortable moving forward? I asked. Complete financial transparency, detailed project plans, and a clear understanding of how responsibilities would be divided, plus a trial period, where we work together on a smaller scale before committing to anything major. And personally, how would you feel about working with the man who was involved in breaking up my previous relationship? Natalie smiled. Personally, I'm grateful to Marcus for his role in breaking up your previous relationship. If he hadn't pursued Victoria, you might still be trapped in an engagement that was making you miserable. And I might still be watching from the sidelines, wishing I had the courage to tell you how I felt. Her perspective reframed the entire situation. Instead of viewing Marcus as the villain who'd destroyed my happiness, I could see him as an unwitting catalyst who'd freed me from a relationship that was fundamentally incompatible with my values and aspirations. So you think we should meet with him again? I think we should invite him to present his project proposal in a formal setting, the same standards we'd apply to any other potential partner. If his concept has merit and his financial backing is solid, we can consider moving forward. If not, we politely decline and continue focusing on our existing commitments. That evening, as we reviewed construction schedules and material delivery timelines for our current project, I reflected on how much my understanding of forgiveness and redemption had evolved. A year ago, I would have viewed Marcus's request as an insult and an intrusion. Now I saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate that success didn't require holding grudges or excluding people who'd made mistakes. More importantly, I realized that my willingness to consider working with Marcus was a sign of how completely I'd moved beyond my relationship with Victoria. The pain and anger that had once consumed me had been replaced by confidence and purpose. I no longer needed to punish Marcus for his role in ending my engagement because I was genuinely grateful for the life I'd built in its aftermath. Whatever. We decided about his proposal. I knew that our choice would be based on rational evaluation rather than emotional reaction. And that, perhaps more than anything else, proved how far I'd traveled from the desperate, abandoned man who'd sat in his empty kitchen 6 months earlier, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. Now I knew that sometimes falling apart is just the first step toward building something better. 2 years later, I stood in the garden of our newly completed sustainable community development, watching children play on equipment made from recycled materials while their parents tended vegetables and raised beds that doubled as natural stormwater management systems. The project had exceeded every expectation we'd set. It's becoming a model for affordable housing initiatives throughout Oregon and Washington. Marcus had proven himself a reliable partner, channeling his ambition into community benefit rather than personal advancement. Our collaborative affordable housing project in North Portland was nearing completion, providing homes for working families while demonstrating that ethical business practices could be both profitable and socially responsible. He'd earned his redemption through consistent action rather than empty promises. Natalie emerged from the community center carrying architectural drawings for our next development. This one focused on senior housing with integrated healthcare services. Her environmental consulting firm had grown into one of the most respected sustainable development advisories on the West Coast, and we'd discovered that our professional partnership enhanced rather than complicated our personal relationship. The City Planning Commission approved our proposal for the East Side project, she said, joining me on the garden pathway. Construction can begin next spring. How many units? Add a 5+ commercial space for local businesses and a shared workshop area for residents who want to learn sustainable living practices. I pulled her close, marveling at how natural this felt after 2 years of building something meaningful together. Your grandmother would be proud of how you're using that trust fund. She always said money was only valuable if it created opportunities for other people, Natalie replied. I think she'd approve of what we're accomplishing. A familiar black sedan pulled into the community parking area, and I recognized Victoria stepping out of the passenger side. She looked elegant as always, though there was something different about her expression as she surveyed our completed development. The driver remained in the car, presumably her latest boyfriend or business partner. She approached us with measured steps, her designer heels clicking against the eco-friendly pavement we'd installed throughout the community. "This is impressive," she said, without preamble, gesturing toward the residential buildings that incorporated solar panels, rainwater collection systems, and community garden spaces. I heard about it from several industry contacts, but seeing it in person is quite different. "Thank you," I said simply. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to apologize," she said, meeting my eyes directly. "Not just for how I handled our breakup, but for dismissing your vision for sustainable development. You and Natalie have created something that actually serves the community instead of just extracting profit from it." Natalie squeezed my hand gently. "We all make mistakes, Victoria. The important thing is learning from them. I've learned that choosing partners based on convenience or advancement rather than genuine compatibility leads to disappointment." Victoria said with rueful honesty. "I've also learned that some people are capable of much more than I gave them credit for." "Are you happy?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Victoria considered this seriously. "I'm successful, and I'm learning to distinguish between the two. My current relationship is built on mutual respect rather than calculation, which is progress. My work focuses more on community development and less on maximum profit extraction, which feels better than anything I accomplished before." "That sounds like growth," Natalie said warmly. "It sounds like you found what you were really looking for," Victoria replied, watching our easy interaction with something that might have been wistful recognition. "I should let you get back to your evening." As she walked back toward her car, I felt the final dissolution of any complicated feelings about our shared past. Victoria had become simply someone I used to know, a chapter in my story that had led to much better chapters. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if she hadn't called off your engagement?" Natalie asked as we watched the sedan disappear into evening traffic. "No," I said honestly, "because I know exactly what would have happened. I would have spent years trying to convince myself that comfortable was the same as happy, and you would have spent years watching someone who didn't deserve your attention. And now I wake up every morning excited about the work we're doing and the life we're building together. Now I understand that the best relationships aren't about finding someone who completes you, but finding someone who inspires you to become the person you were meant to be." Natalie turned in my arms, her face illuminated by the solar-powered pathway lights we'd designed for the community. "I love you, Ryan Mitchell. I love you too, Natalie Sterling Mitchell." She laughed at the hyphenated name we'd chosen when we'd gotten married 6 months earlier in a small ceremony focused on commitment rather than spectacle. "Ready to go home and plan tomorrow's site inspection? Always?" As we walked toward our hybrid vehicle, I reflected on the mysterious ways life redirects us toward our true purposes. Victoria's betrayal had felt like the end of everything I'd worked toward, but it had actually been the beginning of everything I'd been working toward, without realizing it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best. A thing that could have happened to you. Sometimes getting left behind is actually getting set free. And sometimes the sister who seemed like the consolation prize was actually the jackpot you'd been too distracted to notice. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.